Hello and welcome back to the deep dive.
Hello.
Today, we are cracking open a door that, quite frankly, most of us just slam shut the moment our alarm clock starts screaming in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
We are going into the world of dreams.
But not in the way you usually hear about it. We aren't doing the whole, I dreamed about a spiraling staircase, what does that mean kind of thing.
No, absolutely not. We are looking at, well, the mechanics of reality itself. We're digging into a source that takes the scientific methods, specifically the scientific method of the mid-1960s, and basically, well, it laughs in its face.
It really does. It's a fascinating clash. You have the rigid, the white coat materialism of 1965 meeting this multi-dimensional, incredibly articulate personality known as Seth.
And the sparks really fly in this one.
Oh, for sure.
They really do. We are focusing specifically on session 194 of the early sessions, book 4 of the Seth material. And the date on the record is September 29th, 1965.
A Wednesday night.
A Wednesday night in Elmira, New York. And the vibe is, well, it's loose, it's funny, but it's also a little bit chilling when you really dig into the implications of what they're talking about.
It completely flips the script on sleep. And before we dive headfirst into the rabbit hole, we should probably mention that this deep dive is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
Right. We're here to explore, we're here to learn. So let's set the scene. You have Robert Butts and Jane Roberts, the couple who channeled Seth, and they've been reading a magazine.
Specifically, The New Yorker. The September 18th, 1965 issue. There's an article in there called A Third Stage of Existence. It was all about the cutting-edge sleep science of the time.
Right.
Specifically, REM, sleep rapid eye movement.
Which is common knowledge now. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have a fitness tracker or a smartwatch, you see that little REM bar on your graph every morning. But back then, this was the frontier.
It really was. Scientists were just discovering that sleep wasn't just turning off. There was this period where the eyes moved rapidly, the brain lit up like a Christmas tree, and they assumed that was the dream.
The moment it all happened.
Exactly.
And Seth had some thoughts on how the scientists were going about this. And this brings us to what I'm calling the nincompoop critique.
It's a strong opening, isn't it?
It's hilarious. So Jane goes into a trance, Seth comes through, and he immediately starts riffing on this article. He says he was amused.
And amused is Seth being polite.
Yeah.
He says, and I'm quoting this because it's just perfect, "This is indeed an example of an endeavor of the sort that is too often carried on, with energy expended in a search for a reality that is known by any nincompoop to exist."
Known by any nincompoop to exist.
I love that phrase. He's basically saying, why are you spending all this money and, frankly, torturing people just to prove that dreams are real? Everybody knows dreams are real. It really highlights this fundamental clash in worldviews. You have to understand the context of 1965 psychology. I mean, behaviorism was still king.
So if you can't measure it.
If you couldn't measure it, weigh it, or poke it with a stick, it didn't exist. It wasn't considered real.
Right. If it's not data, it's just noise.
Exactly. So these scientists felt they had to prove the existence of the dream state by measuring the physical body's reaction to it. Hooking people up to electrodes, taping their eyelids, monitoring their breathing.
It sounds like a nightmare in and of itself.
It really does. And Seth's whole point is, you're trying to catch a ghost with a fishing net. It's the wrong tool for the job.
A ghost in a fishing net. That's good.
He says the reality of dreams themselves can only be investigated through direct contact. Their reality cannot be probed by scientific devices, for dreams in this respect are as nebulous as the spirit or soul or inner self.
Nebulous as the spirit. That's a beautiful phrase, but for a scientist in a lab coat, that's just incredibly frustrating. You can't put nebulous on a chart.
And that's the friction right there. Seth is saying you can't isolate the dreamer from the personality. You can't treat a dream like a rock you picked up on Mars and put it under a microscope. He says dreams cannot be suddenly made flesh to dwell among you.
So he's saying that by trying to make it physical, by looking for all the physical markers, they're actually missing the point entirely.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He argues that treating dreams as mechanical, as just physical objects, is a complete dead end. It's like trying to understand the plot of a movie by analyzing the chemical composition of the projector bulb.
That's a fantastic analogy. Yeah, you might know everything about the heat and the light output, but you have no idea what the story is. You don't know if it's a comedy or a tragedy.
Not a clue. And because the scientists are so focused on the projector, the body, they're misinterpreting what they're seeing. Which leads us to the part of the session that honestly gave me a bit of a shiver. The mechanics of what's actually happening when we sleep.
Okay, this is the red pill moment because the New Yorker article, and frankly most modern science even today, says REM is when the dream happens. You fall asleep, you drift down, then you come up to REM, the movie starts, and then you go back down into deep sleep.
That is the standard model, yeah.
Yeah.
But Seth just completely inverts this.
He says REM isn't the start of the dream.
No, not at all. He says the eye movements noted in the beginning of REM sleep are only indications of dream activity that is closely connected to the physical layers of the self.
Okay, hold on. Let's unpack that. If REM isn't the start, what is it?
Seth argues that REM actually marks the return of the personality.
The return from where?
From the deep. He says the personality has been off in deeper layers of dream awareness, which he describes as being far divorced from the physical body.
So deep sleep, the part where we think nothing is happening, where the brain waves get all slow and long, that's actually where the real action is.
That's it. Seth says in those deep states, there's a transference of energy. The self literally travels to levels of awareness that are completely separate from the bedroom you're sleeping in.
That sounds like an astronaut on a spacewalk.
That's actually a perfect metaphor. Imagine the deep sleep state is the astronaut floating out in the void, doing complex repairs, seeing the universe.
And the body is the ship, just sort of floating there on autopilot.
The body is the ship. Now, every so often, that astronaut has to come back to the airlock to check the oxygen levels, check the tether, make sure the ship hasn't drifted into an asteroid field.
And that check-in, that's REM.
That is REM. Seth says the eye movements are the self coming back to the surface areas to check on the physical environment. We orient ourselves slightly with the body, ensure we're safe, and then we dive right back down.
So the dream doesn't start with REM. The dream is interrupted by REM.
Exactly. We're just surfacing for air.
That is.
Yeah.
That's slightly terrifying, but also kind of amazing. It implies that we are leaving, like actually leaving our bodies.
Seth is very clear on this. He says, actions are indeed being carried on. Walking, talking, working, any conceivable dream action. And these actions, he points out, require energy.
But wait, if I'm out there walking and talking in some other reality, where am I getting the energy from? I'm lying in bed, I haven't eaten in 6 hours.
This brings us to the chemistry part. And honestly, this feels like the missing link in biology. Seth describes the body as a sort of chemical refinery.
A refinery, okay.
Yes. He talks about chemical excesses.
Chemical excesses, so like waste products.
Not waste in the sense of garbage, but more like potential energy.
Yeah.
Think about your day. You get stressed out at work, you get excited about a movie, you get angry in traffic.
Sure, my cortisol spikes, my adrenaline pumps, all of that.
Exactly. You are building up a chemical charge.
Yeah.
But you don't always use all of it. You sit at a desk, you sit in a car, that chemical potential just sort of builds up in the body.
Seth says these excesses are built up during the waking state.
And then sleep is what deals with them. Sleep is the conversion process. Seth says these chemicals are drained off, and here's the kicker, changed into electrical energy which forms and sustains dream images.
Whoa. Hold on. So my stress, my excitement, my coffee jitters, that chemical load is the actual fuel for the world I build at night.
It's the propellant.
So if I have a really boring day where I do nothing and feel nothing...
You might have duller dreams.
Yeah.
But if you have a day of intense emotion and repression, you have a full tank of gas.
That makes so much sense. It explains why when you're super stressed, your dreams are so vivid and chaotic, you're just burning off the fuel.
Precisely. Seth calls sleep a necessary energy conversion process. It's not just rest for your muscles. It's a chemical necessity. If you don't convert that fuel, it becomes dangerous.
Dangerous how? Like the tank overflows.
Yes. And that actually explains why sleep deprivation is so destructive.
This brings us to the next major point Seth tackles. The cruelty of the scientists. Yeah, let's talk about the poor cats. The New Yorker article apparently discussed a scientist, Seth calls him Dr. Instream, though that might be a pseudonym, who is keeping humans and cats awake to see what would happen.
Right. And they weren't just keeping them awake. They were depriving them of REM sleep specifically, waking them up every single time the eyes started to move.
And Seth is not a fan of this method.
Not at all. He calls it tampering. He says, flat out, it is impossible to deprive a human being of dreams.
Wait, but if you keep them awake, aren't you depriving them? How does that work?
Not according to Seth. He says the system must work. The conversion has to happen. So if you deprive the body of sleep, the necessary mental function will be carried on subconsciously.
You mean while you're awake.
Exactly. The dream reality starts to bleed over into the waking reality because it has to happen. The pressure in the system is just too high.
Yeah. Hallucinations.
Hallucinations,
Yeah.
delusions, paranoia. Seth says the very attempt to deprive an individual of sleep, however, will automatically set into mechanism subconscious dream activity.
So the experiment is flawed from the very start.
It's completely invalid. By forcing the subject to stay awake, you are changing the conditions so drastically that you aren't studying natural dreaming anymore. You're studying a system in total collapse.
It's like trying to study how a fish swims by taking it out of the water and watching it flop around on the deck.
That is a perfect analogy. The data you get from a sleep-deprived person isn't data about dreams. It's data about what happens when you torture someone.
Seth actually has a quote about this, right? About where the real laboratory is.
Yes, it's a great line. He says, "The only laboratory for study of dreams is the laboratory of the personality."
So what's the alternative? If we can't torture undergrads by keeping them awake for 72 hours, how are we supposed to study this? Because we do want to know.
Seth suggests hypnosis.
Hypnosis. Okay. That feels very, well, very non-scientific for 1965.
Oh, it was seen as completely French.
Hmm.
But Seth argues it's the better method. Instead of using physical electrodes and deprivation, you use the mind to access the mind.
How would that even work in practice?
Well, you find a good subject. You hypnotize them. And you suggest that they can sleep normally. You don't wake them up at all. But, and this is the really cool part, you give them the suggestion that they can verbally describe the dream while they are dreaming.
Without waking up.
Without waking up.
Yeah.
They become a live reporter from the dream dimension.
That sounds incredible. Has anyone ever done that?
There have been experiments along those lines, yeah.
Hmm.
Seth says this approach yields more legitimate information because you aren't fighting the body's natural need to convert that chemical energy. You aren't creating a crisis, you're just opening a communication line.
You know, it seems so obvious when you put it that way. Why fight the very system you're trying to study?
Because, again, Western science has this obsession with the objective observer. Hypnosis feels too subjective to them. It feels messy. You can't measure hypnosis with a ruler.
But if the subject you're studying is nebulous, as he said, maybe you need a nebulous ruler.
Exactly.
Speaking of subjective data, there's a section in here about children that really made me rethink how I look at kids.
Oh, this is profound. The comparison between children and adults is one of the most interesting parts of this whole session.
Seth says children dream more vividly and more frequently than adults, which, as a parent, I can totally believe. My kid wakes up telling me about flying dragons and purple oceans constantly. But Seth explains why.
It comes back to the ego.
The ego.
Seth says a child's ego is not yet fully formed.
It's still cooking.
Right. Think of the ego as a guard dog. In adults, that guard dog is fully grown, it's trained, and it's aggressive. Its main job is to keep you focused on physical reality, paying your taxes, driving the car, not walking in the walls. It actively blocks out the other data.
So it filters out the dream world so we can function here in this one.
Precisely. But in children, the guard dog is still a puppy. It sleeps a lot, it gets distracted, it lets things slip by.
So they're just more open to the dream reality. They can see it more clearly.
Yes. They have more freedom, as Seth puts it. They traverse that barrier between waking and dreaming much, much more easily.
But there's a flip side to this, isn't there? A downside to having a puppy for a guard dog.
There is. Seth notes that because they are so open, and because they are not as sure of the physical environment as adults are, they return to the surface more often.
Ah, so that's why kids wake up so much during the night.
It's not just hunger or a wet diaper. Seth suggests they return to periods of near wakefulness to check their physical environment. They need to reassure themselves that they are still physically here.
That is actually really touching. They're like little astronauts tethered to a ship, but they're scared the ship might leave without them, so they keep tugging on the line.
That's a beautiful image. They pull on the tether just to feel the resistance. Okay, the body is still there, the room is still there, mom and dad are still down the hall, and then they can go back out to the dream.
And there's a chemical component to this too, right? With the kids?
Yes. Seth mentions that because children live such intense waking lives, everything is new to them, everything is a discovery, every emotion is huge, they build up those chemical excesses much faster than adults do.
They have more fuel.
They have more propellant, as Seth calls it. So their dreams are powered by this high-octane fuel of curiosity and intensity.
It really makes you wonder what we lose as we get older. We get stable, sure. We get a good 8 hours. But we lose that propellant.
We do. We trade the vividness of the dream world for the stability of the physical world. We calcify.
So we've got the theory, we've got the critique of science, we've got the chemistry of it all. But this is a Seth session, which means they usually try to do something. They don't just talk.
Right. Jane and Rob were very into testing this stuff. They were experimentalists at heart. They wanted to see it in action.
And this leads us to the PSI experiments. This part is where the vibe shifts from philosophical to straight up spooky.
It really does. They decided to try and tune into this Dr. Instream, the scientist who was mentioned in the New Yorker article.
Now, you got to keep in mind, they don't know this guy. They just read an article. He's likely in a lab in New York City or Chicago. They are in their living room in El Mayoral.
Correct. It is 10:06 p.m. Jean goes quiet. She enters a dissociated state. And Seth or Jane channeling starts getting these impressions.
And what do they see? It's not vague stuff like, I sense a presence or I feel a cold spot.
No, it's very specific visual data. She sees an alleyway, high buildings. She says it's fairly dark, but there are lights nearby.
It feels like a scene from a noir movie.
It does. Then she mentions a round object in his hand, papers on a desk, a package that was received today or will be tomorrow.
And then the names start coming through.
Yes. She says, there is a connection, something to do with lights. Does he perhaps live on Light Street? Or his name.
Lightman.
And then the phrase federal matter.
Right. Now, in the session notes, they don't get immediate verification of any of this. We don't know if Dr. Instream actually lived on Light Street.
Yeah.
But the process itself is what matters here.
It shows the mechanism Seth was talking about earlier, that consciousness can travel. Jane isn't guessing. She's attempting to project her awareness.
She is sending her astronaut out to have a look at Dr. Instream's office. But then we get to the envelope test. And this is where it gets really interesting because it deals with how this information can get garbled. It's a lesson in how our own brains can mess up the signal.
Okay, set the scene to the envelope test. This is a classic parapsychology setup.
Robert Butts has prepared a test object. He put a black and white photograph of a dog named Misha into a sealed envelope.
This was Jane's dog from, like 11 years prior?
Yes, the dog is long dead. Rob slipped the photo between two pieces of thick cardboard so she couldn't feel the edges or the texture. It's a double-blind test, essentially. Jane holds it, but she has no idea what's in there. Rob knows, but he's silent.
So Jane holds the envelope. She closes her eyes. What does she get?
Her first hit is the color purple.
Purple. Okay. Interesting for a black and white photo.
Right. Then she says, something rather neutral. Then, partially blank, dots. Vertical and perhaps cone-shaped. And finally, a fence-like shape.
And then she just stops.
Yeah, and she feels like she failed completely.
The notes say she regarded it as a failure. She's like, purple, cone, it's a black and white photo of a dog. I missed completely.
But then they analyze it. They open the envelope. And here is where the aha moment comes in for them.
Unpack it for us. What do they find?
So Rob looks at the photo. The dog is sitting in front of a house. The house has brick facing. Jane remembers that house vividly, and she says it had a peculiar blue and red cast to the bricks.
Blue and red make purple.
Exactly. She was seeing the color of the memory associated with the subject, not the black and white of the photo itself.
That is fascinating. What about the verticals?
The photo has strong vertical lines in the background, the siding on the house, the edges of the porch.
Okay, and the cone. That's a weird one.
This is my favorite part. Look at a dog sitting down, facing you. Narrow head, wide paws on the ground. It forms a rough cone shape.
No way. That's incredible.
And the fence-like shape. There are architectural details on the porch railing that look exactly like a little fence.
So she wasn't seeing the photo as an object like, this is a piece of Kodak paper. She was seeing the reality the photo represented, the building blocks of the image.
Or she was picking up on the visual data but interpreting it abstractly before her brain could label it. She saw the geometry, verticals, cone, purple. It's like raw data without the label dog.
That makes a lot of sense. The labeling part of the brain, the analytical left hemisphere, wasn't getting in the way. She was just getting this raw sensory input.
But Seth adds another layer to this, right? He suggests why it wasn't crystal clear. Why didn't she just say, my old dog, Misha?
Yes. This is technically fascinating. He calls it bleed through.
Bleed through.
Remember, just minutes before this, they were tuning into Dr. Instream, the scientist with the light street and the high buildings. Seth suggests that the data from that experiment might have overlapped with the envelope test.
So it's like listening to two radio stations at once and they're not quite tuned in right.
Exactly. Seth says on occasion it is possible that some of the in-stream material may bleed through.
That is such a practical, grounded explanation for why psychic stuff is often so messy. We expect it to be like a text message clear, 100% accuracy. But if it's a signal,
Signals get interference, especially when you're trying to switch targets that rapidly. You're asking the consciousness to jump from New York Scientist to dead dog photo in a matter of minutes. There's going to be static.
it's like when you change channels on an old TV and you see the ghost of the last image for a second.
Exactly that.
Which leads us to the final bit of drama in the session,
Yeah.
which is just burnout.
Yes. This is a very human moment. We forget sometimes that Jane Roberts wasn't some kind of machine. She was a woman in the 1960s trying to figure all of this out.
And she is clearly stressed out in this session. You can feel it in the notes.
She has been spending hours every single day trying to tabularize and grade their ESP results. She's making charts. She's giving herself grades. She's trying to be the very scientist that Seth was making fun of earlier.
Right. She wants to prove it. She wants to be legitimate in their eyes.
And Seth just shuts it down.
He's very firm about it.
He says, this is not his job. He's referring to Rupert, which is his name for Jane.
Rupert.
Yes. He says, his job is to remain as spontaneous as possible. His work in attempting to tabularize the test results thus far will only hamper our results.
Hamper our results. That's so counterintuitive. You'd think trying harder would make you better. You'd think being rigorous would help things.
Not in this field.
Yeah.
Seth is saying that the analytical mind, the part that wants to judge and grade and categorize, is the enemy of the intuitive mind.
But why?
Because the moment you start judging, you start filtering. If Jane is worried about getting an A, she's going to second-guess the purple. She's going to say, well, purple doesn't make logical sense, so I won't say it, and then she loses the hit.
It's the observer effect again. By observing it too closely, you change the outcome. You strangle it.
Exactly. He tells Rob to take over the grading. Jane needs to just be. She needs to be the open channel, not the damn operator.
You know, there is a lesson there for everyone, honestly, not just for people trying to be psychic.
Absolutely. We kill the magic by overanalyzing it, whether it's creativity or writing or relationships or even just enjoying our dreams. Sometimes you just have to let the process happen without standing over its shoulder with a clipboard.
Speaking of letting things happen, they do briefly mention their cat, Willie.
Ah, yes, the domestic drama. Willie the cat has been sick.
And Rob asks about it. Why has our cat been sick so often lately?
Seth's answer is really interesting. He says it's not serious, but he links it directly to Jane's condition.
The burnout.
Yes. He implies that because Jane is tired and stressed from all this grading work, the cat is literally picking up on that energy.
That is the ultimate guilt trip for any pet owner. Your cat is sick because you're working too hard and you're stressed.
It is a bit harsh. But in the Seth worldview, everything is connected. The household is an energy system, and pets are very, very sensitive. They act as barometers for the emotional environment of the home.
So Willie was basically manifesting Jane's stress physically.
That's the implication. Seth promises to discuss it more next time, but he reassures them it's nothing life-threatening, just energy stuff.
A typical cliffhanger ending.
Always leave them wanting more.
So bringing this all back to the center, we have covered a huge amount of ground today.
We really have. From science to cats.
We have the critique of materialist science, the nincompoops who try to measure the soul with a ruler.
We have the revelation that REM sleep is actually us returning from the deep dive, not starting it. The idea of the astronaut coming back to check on the ship.
We have the chemical conversion theory, that our waking stress and emotion is literally the fuel, the gasoline for our dream reality.
And we have the lesson on spontaneity. Don't strangle the magic with analysis. Trust the purple, even if you don't understand it yet.
It is such a comprehensive look at how Seth views reality. It is not just about ghosts or the afterlife. It is about physics, psychology, and biology all wrapped up into one.
It's a unified theory of existence, really.
So what does this all mean for you, for the listener, for the person driving to work right now or washing the dishes?
I think the biggest takeaway is to reframe how you view sleep. It is not just off time. It is not just a screensaver for your brain while your body recharges.
It's the other shift.
It is the other shift. You are clocking out of the physical reality, and you are clocking into a mental reality that is just as valid and perhaps even more fundamental.
And maybe, just maybe, when you wake up feeling groggy and exhausted, it's not because you slept poorly, but because you were doing some really heavy lifting in that other dimension.
Or because you built up too much chemical propellant the day before and had a busy night burning it all off.
Exactly. You were running a marathon on Mars and you didn't even know it.
I think it also invites us to trust our intuition more. Like Jane with the dog photo. She had the data, she had purple, she had cone, but she judged it as wrong because it didn't fit her logical expectation of what the answer should look like.
Right. If she had just trusted the purple, she would have realized she was seeing the bricks all along.
We often have the answers, but we discard them because they don't look the way we think they should.
That is a powerful thought.
It is.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. Something to chew on for the rest of the day.
Go for it.
Seth says we build up chemical energy during the day to fuel our dreams at night. That implies the mechanism relies on us being here in the physical world. But what if we flip it?
How so?
What if the purpose of waking life is just to generate fuel for our dream life?
Wow, that is a total inversion.
Think about it. We think the waking world is the real one and dreams are just a side effect, a symptom. But what if we are just batteries? We run around, we get stressed, we eat food, we build up this chemical charge just so we can go do the real work when we close our eyes.
That suggests that the dream self is the master, and the waking self is just the worker bee gathering pollen for the hive.
Exactly. What if we are just the worker bees for our own souls?
It's a humbling perspective, and a little bit terrifying, to be honest.
But hey, that's why we do the deep dive. We like to shake things up.
Indeed, we do.
If you want to go straight to the source, and we highly, highly recommend you do, because we are just scratching the surface here, you need to check out the Seth material.
Specifically, this session was from the early sessions, Book 4. These books are dense, they're fascinating, and they are completely unique.
You can find them and support the publisher, which is the New Awareness Network. Their website is sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
That's sethcenter.com/the early sessions. It is well worth a visit.
Definitely. Go get the books, read them, and decide for yourself if you're a nincompoop or maybe a master of the dream dimension.
Or, somewhere in between.
Or somewhere in between. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Good night or good morning, depending on which reality you're currently in.
See you next time.